I've been seasick basically every way you can be. So I've tried every medication I've ever heard of, every cure that I've ever heard of, and those are the things that have worked for me.
Hey everyone, John here from Cast and Spear, and today we have back on the podcast Dan Smith from howtocatchanyfish.com, and folks, he delivers. If you've ever been seasick, you know it's the worst feeling ever, but Dan shares with you his advice on what's worked for him to make him go from a person who goes on the water and gets seasick to one who's now very resilient towards it and enjoys a whole bunch of ocean fishing. So, please welcome back to the podcast, Dan Smith.
Yeah, this is something I've thought a lot about because I am or used to be very prone to seasickness. So the first time I went deep sea fishing, it was my 18th birthday. My dad got me like a spot on a boat that went out from Marlin, and I spent the entire time puking, and I just wanted to die the whole time, and that made me very hesitant to go back deep sea fishing again for a few years. But at some point, if you want to catch big fish, you have to go in the ocean. So I just kind of made myself do it. And the first several times I threw up, but over time I built a little bit of a resistance, and I found different sort of tips and techniques that worked for me to help. And so I haven't thrown up from seasickness in quite a few years. And I've been on some really rough seas in Alaska, and I've done live aboard trips where I've spent 6 straight days out in the open ocean. So I feel like I've pretty much got that under control, but it's still something I think about and still something I prepare for, because I still remember what it's like to be really seasick, and there's no worse feeling if you still have 24 or 48, however many hours left on the boat, and you're just feeling like you want to die. So some of the things that I do, if I know it's going to be really rough, I always eat something, because if you go out with an empty stomach, you're pretty much guaranteed to feel sick. I mean, you might feel sick just from not having anything in your stomach anyway. So I'll make sure I eat a lot, but I try and eat something like saltines or something that's really bland. Worst case scenario, if it comes back up, it doesn't taste so bad. So I if I know it's going to be rough, I eat a bunch of saltines before going out. I do 2 different kinds of seasickness medication. I tend to do this thing called Bonine, which is like Dramamine. It's just a little lighter dose. And then in conjunction with that, I also do the ear patch, the drug's called scopolamine. So those 2 things used together is pretty powerful. I've never thrown up or really felt that sick with using both of those things combined. It does take your body, or at least my body, a little while to get used to that. And some people, that'll just knock them out. So I usually start the day before in terms of dosing. So at the latest, I'll put it in like the night before that I'm going to go out, and that helps kind of get it going in your system. And if you take it right before you go, it doesn't work nearly as well. And if you take it once you start feeling sick, then it's just a complete waste of time. So those 2 things. Ginger ale is really helpful once you start not feeling well. So one thing I used to do a lot when I was on those overnight party boats in Southern California is if I started to not feel so good, usually I'd start to not feel good at night on the way out because it's dark and you can't really get your bearings. And so what I do is chug like most of a can of ginger ale and then burp. And for whatever reason, that helps reset your equilibrium. So that's a little tip I used. And then another thing I did a lot of, and still do a lot of, is go to the back middle of the boat, because that is the part of the boat that moves the least, and then just try and focus on something that doesn't move, like the horizon, and then kind of bend your knees with the rolling of the boat so that your head doesn't move too much. It takes a little practice. It's kind of like literally getting your sea legs, but once you can get it to where you're focused on something that doesn't move, and your body's sort of rolling with the boat, but your head's not getting thrown around, that makes a huge difference. So I'd say those are the main tips for me. And then if you do throw up, just make sure you drink some water and put down some more saltines and keep going at it. Most of the times that I've gotten seasick, if I throw up once, I'm usually fine. I know that's not how it is for a lot of people, but just having a good mental attitude about it and fighting the seasickness. The worst thing you can do is like go down below deck and lie down, because if you feel sick and you do that, you are never getting better. I don't I don't think I've ever seen someone recover from seasickness by doing that. So you have to stay out in the fresh air, and you have to fight it mentally and try and have a good attitude and keep fishing. And one of the best cures for seasickness is a wide open bite. I've seen a lot of people get suddenly cured on those long range tuna trips from seasickness. When the tuna started to bite, suddenly everyone forgets about it. So there is a mental aspect to it, but there's a physical aspect as well, and you have to try and tackle the physical aspect with a combination of medications and trying to keep your head from getting tossed around too much and trying to keep something in your stomach.
Those are some of the best seasickness tips I've ever heard, to be honest. I mean,
Oh, thanks. So
yeah,
hopefully it works for you.
Awesome. No, that's great.
I've been seasick basically every way you can be. So I've tried every medication I've ever heard of, every cure that I've ever heard of, and those are the things that have worked for me.
That's awesome, because I've had a lot of friends who have given up on their first time they've ever been seasick. So to show that you can kind of build a resistance and kind of put it behind you and still fish, that's awesome. I think that's going to give a lot of people a lot of hope to try it again.
Yeah, one of the charter captains I went out with in Mexico was telling me the first time he went out, when he first got a job as a deckhand or whatever, he got so sick he basically just curled up in a corner and like didn't move for like 2 days or something. But then he was fine, and he's been a charter captain for like 25 years since after that. So you can definitely build a resistance to it. It's just a question of whether you're willing to endure some discomfort in the meantime, and the medications and some of those other tips can help minimize that discomfort while you're building up that resistance.
I feel like a lot of sales of ginger ale is going to spike now. Everybody's going to be burping on the boats.
Yeah, it works surprisingly well. It's kind of a temporary thing. You have to do the other thing. You have to kind of address the underlying cause, which is your head getting tossed around and your body not getting used to that. But that can be a good way to help jumpstart that process.
Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you found this helpful. Do you know anybody who gets seasick? Maybe your buddy who blew chunks the last time you guys were out deep sea fishing. Do me a huge favor. It would mean the world to me if you can share this podcast with them, and this episode specifically. They might find some value, and you might not have to endure watching that the next time you go out fishing. All right, so if you haven't already done so, it would also be very helpful if you can give us a review and a rating on iTunes. We read every comment. We just want to make sure the podcast is exactly what you're looking for. And like I said, if you have anybody who you think would benefit from this podcast and enjoy listening to it, please share with them. Until next time, keep those lines tight, everyone. See ya.